Welcome to the Backlash of Backlash.com. My name is Rod Van Mecklin, and in this video I'm going to read excerpts from my 1995 article, Civilizing Evolution. Now, ironically, I had prepared to make this video a few days ago. I have a cold if you can't tell, and so I didn't make it right away. And then just today I watched Davison's video about evolutionary psychology, which is the subject of this. In it, she argues against the whole concept, or at least parts of the concept of evolutionary psychology. And while I got her argument, I don't think she really made the case. Personally, I'm agnostic on the subject of evolutionary psychology. Like anthropogenic global warming, it's a complicated subject with very educated, well-informed, scientific type people on both sides of the issue. I don't know. So I'm agnostic until the case is made. But here's my article, 1995, Bellevue, Washington. It's increasingly popular these days to talk about our hunter-gatherer heritage, how men hanker after wool-gathering women and women after O.J. Simpson because for tens of thousands of years, humanity roamed the wilderness picking berries and harassing the wildlife. There's much to be said for this view. Thousands of years of behavior can't be discarded, after all, in a single civilized afternoon. Still, the case is far from closed. There's much yet to be considered. What about the huntress? We like to talk about women, how women melt under the stern male gaze of swaggering heroes as they swash their bucklers. But what of Diana? That's a coincidence, really. What of Diana, goddess of the hunt? We find her today in action-adventure movies and other male fantasies. Diana, I had no idea. Even macho men wriggle like puppies at her approach. And throughout human history, hundreds of thousands of men spent their lives turning stone into the quarried blocks of early civilization. What about this? What about the builders, anthropologists call them fabricators, who created civilization, or the farmers who fed them? From hunting and gathering, many turned to pastoral pursuits, wandering with grazing herds as hunters became herdsmen, or settled down to tend and harvest the good earth, creating markets where the farmer and the cowhand could be associates, if not friends. Where builders erected monuments to the increasingly popular marketplaces, what could we do with the hunter, and what could women do without them? According to evolutionary psychologists, women go weak in the knees for the domineering jerk because they are responding at a visceral level to his perceived virility, a characteristic that once upon a time was the mark of a good provider and protector. That may be true, but is extreme virility a desirable characteristic today? Is it good when women who date and mate with domineering jerks become battered women? Always inclined to excuse women and accuse men, feminists are likely to say that women have the right to be attracted to whomever they wish, and it's up to the men to change. Certainly, everyone has the right to be attracted to anyone else, but we should not ignore how we can use this "it's in my genes" excuse for all kinds of behavior. For example, the date rapist could, with equal illegitimacy, plead that he is only a throwback to another time. He can't help it. Just because a behavior had survival utility at one time does not mean it's appropriate or even moral today. Women who swoon over domineering jerks because thousands of years ago that was the best way for females to assure survival of their offspring are no different from men who sleep with bar sluts because thousands of years ago screwing every woman in sight was the best way for males to assure themselves of offspring. Understanding a behavior is not the same as excusing it. Civilization is not about accommodating all of our most primitive drives, but optimizing our survival and human potential. As behaving like a domineering jerk or a bar slut does neither, shouldn't society frown on such behaviors as once it did and encourage more responsible behaviors? A man can be strong without being domineering, and a woman can be sexual without being a slut. So perhaps it's time for us to join the feminists who, in Lilith's manifesto, wrote, quote, "If you, brother, can't get a hard-on for a woman who doesn't grovel at your feet, that's your hang-up. And sister, if you can't turn on to a man who won't club you and drag you off by your hair, that's yours. Keep your hang-ups the hell out of this revolution," close quote. Now, I know feminists Any feminists watching this are going to go, "Oh, that's sexist. You're evil. You hate women." And yet that's a quote from a feminist source. 2013, Olympia, Washington. In 1995, the discussion about evolutionary psychology was still relatively new, its roots in sociobiology notwithstanding. The first social Darwinists included Herbert Spencer, who coined the term survival of the fittest that's popularly attributed to Darwin, and Edward O. Wilson, the scientist that Diana mentioned who studied ants. Desmond Morris's Naked Ape and Robert Ardrey's The Territorial Imperative, among his many other books, catapulted the fundamental concepts into public awareness, and the theories were very neat, very compelling, and sometimes, as in many of Ardrey's assertions, also very wrong. Nonetheless, many of the theories seem to fit. They seem to explain a lot. But often in modern discourse, these theories take on the status of excuses rather than explanations. So while we have feminists and their white knights demanding that we embrace female sexuality at its most primitive without calling it out for what it really is, the sexuality of the naked ape, simultaneously they expose their social conservative roots by holding the vast majority of men to the most rigid of Victorian principles. The arguments tend to bounce around all over the place until eventually all the players have at one time or another expressed almost identical views. And all of it is irrelevant to what really matters. The purpose of civilization is not to accommodate our most primitive instincts, but to improve our chances of survival as a species. In our feminist-dominated societies, the people who are most successful at that, the meek who shall inherit the earth, are the welfare mamas and the deadbeat dads who produce many children at our expense, not the single moms who fit the movie image of a woman courageously struggling against the odds, and I've spoken to quite a few of them. Not the maliciously maligned father whose evil ex deprives him of his children and employs the government to enslave him, and I've talked to a lot of those too. No, it's the women and men who could care less about feminism or the men's rights movement or the father's rights movement or MGTOW, but virtually mass-produce babies and expect the rest of us to support them. Feminists and MGTOW are the genetic losers, feminists by choice, MGTOW because we see no other acceptable choice but to shrug like Ayn Rand's Atlas in this political economy of sex. Currently, I consider myself one of the early MGTOW. Yes, I've had a few relationships, but nothing serious. While I remain open to finding a relationship, even in the current milieu, it's my plan to outlive feminism, to improve my chances of finding a consort who is untainted by that hateful ideology. Consort. L.E. Modisett Jr. in his books, which are great books for young people, young women and young men. The books are basically all the same story, and they're all about one thing, making the right choices. And he doesn't use wife or husband. He uses consort. I like that. If kings and queens can refer to their spouses as a consort, why can't we? So I plan to. That's all for now. Check out the other videos. Subscribe to the channel for the Backlash at backlash.com. My name is Rod Van Mecklin.